Lake Bluff Village Board of Trustees. Clerk, please call the roll.
Trustee Inkeman.
Here.
Trustee Briand.
Here.
Trustee Fisher.
Here.
Trustee Markey.
Here.
Trustee Ryder.
Here.
Thank you. Please stand and join me in reciting the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Next is our awards and proclamations, and today is a proclamation designating September 19th to 25th, 2022, the National Rail Safety Week. Whereas 2,148 rail grade crossing collisions resulted in 658 personal injuries and were responsible for 238 fatalities in the United States during the year 2021. And whereas 1,151 trespassing incidents have occurred in the United States, resulting in 528 pedestrians being killed and another 623 injured while trespassing on railroad property rights of way during 2021. And whereas educating and informing the public about rail safety, reminding the public that railroad right-of-ways are private property, enhancing public awareness of the dangers associated with highway rail grade crossings, ensuring pedestrians and motorists are looking and listening while near railways, and obeying established traffic laws will reduce the number of fatalities and injuries. And whereas the International Association of Chiefs of Police, National Operation Lifesaver, United States Department of Transportation, and all local, state, county, and railroad law enforcement officers, first responders, and railroad corporations commit to partnering together in an effort to educate at a national level all aspects of railroad safety, to enforce applicable laws in support of National Rail Safety Week. Now, therefore, be it resolved that I, Régis Charlot, Village President of the Village of Lake Bluff, Illinois, do hereby proclaim the week of September 19th to the 25th, 2022, National Rail Safety Week in the Village of Lake Bluff. Thank you. Next is item number 4, the consideration of the minutes of July 25th, 2022 Village Board meeting. Is there a motion to approve the minutes?
So moved.
A second.
Second.
Do we have any changes? I see none. Thank you. Clerk, please call the roll.
Trustee Inkeman.
Aye.
Trustee Briand.
Aye.
Trustee Fisher.
Aye.
Trustee Markey.
Aye.
Trustee Ryder.
Aye.
Thank you. Next is item number 5, non-agenda items and visitors. The Village President and Board of Trustees allocate 15 minutes during this item for those individuals who would like the opportunity to address the Village Board of Trustees on any matter not listed on the agenda. Each person addressing the Village Board of Trustees is asked to limit their comments to a maximum of 5 minutes. I understand that we have at least one person willing to address the board. Please state your name and address.
Yes, my name is John Grand, and I reside at 200 Sunset Terrace. Our home sits in the shadow of Stonebridge's magnificent tower. I see it every single day. Just a few years ago, I sat in this room and I listened to Peter Kite, managing partner of the Roanoke Group, talk about the development plan for the Stonebridge property. The manor house would contain residences, the beautiful gardens would be restored, etc., etc., etc. He even submitted a traffic study showing no impacts from the development on Green Bay Road because with only retirees and empty nesters, nobody was going to be up before 10 o'clock. Looking back, I recall thinking, this guy is saying all the right things. He went on to talk about his respect for the village and assured listeners that his development would be compatible with the look, the feel, and the history of Lake Bluff. The village, in its turn, has done everything possible to accommodate Mr. Kite and his group, bending over backwards, change after change in the development plan. And that was a mistake. And we don't expect our leaders to be perfect, but when a mistake is made, we expect them to realize it. And having realized it, we expect them to correct it. Now, it's not your fault, perhaps, that things are the way they are, but it is your responsibility to have done something about them. Because despite the acquisition of the village to every request for change, nothing was being built. And good neighbor Mr. Kite, he allowed his fence to deteriorate and replaced it only under duress. He allowed the manor house to deteriorate while arguing for greater density on the site. And ultimately, to no one's great surprise, Mr. Kite informed the village that the manor house could not be developed as planned because it was too expensive. The solution? Demolish it. And the village has agreed. Now, this certainly raises a question. How could the Roanoke Group have been so naive when it made its promises regarding the restoration and reuse of the manor house? Now, it seems to me that any reputable, experienced professional developer would have determined the feasibility and attendant costs of restoring and repurposing the manor house at the outset. But to discover the problem some 10 years after, that's strange credulity. Meanwhile, the village has spent hours dealing with the endless issues, changes, modifications, and non-compliance associated with this project. And Mr. Kite has over and over again had his request granted. So I ask again, where is the development? The village and its taxpayers are out hundreds of thousands of dollars. Yet in the recent settlement agreement, even the legitimate fines levied to force Mr. Kite to fix his fence were waived. According to the village, it gave in on all these issues out of fear of losing more money through further litigation. Now that suggests that the village's case was weak and its actions indefensible. And that raises questions about what the taxpayers got for the legal fees paid. Now, if I was a cynic, I would say that the village basically decided to give Mr. Kite anything he wanted just to make this go away. So after all the time, all the money spent, all the accommodations, where are we? We have no development, and the property is for sale again. Mr. Kite is walking away, and that would be fine, except for one thing. His parting gift to the village he claimed to admire is the destruction of an iconic piece of its history. He claims this is necessary to make the property saleable. But in fact, serious offers have been made for the manor house and the gatehouse and rejected with no good faith negotiation to find the right price. Indeed, a serious offer to buy the entire property with those two structures intact was also made and rejected with no further discussion. Now, a close reading of the settlement agreement suggests that there is no right price. No, Mr. Kite simply wants to destroy the manor house, period. And once it is gone forever. And the gatehouse, with its beautiful tower, gone too. And that is a shame. Worse, in the village's own budget document, it says that the administration is, quote, to maintain and manage the historic and architectural preservation of the village. Not much ambiguity there, but it's just empty words that are unsupported and apparently unsupportable. People of Lake Bluff deserve better. Now, in the end, you may wonder why all the fuss over a few dilapidated buildings. Communities, like people, have histories that have shaped their character. And we honor that history not to indulge in nostalgia, but rather to ground ourselves. The late historian David McCullough observed, History is who we are and why we are the way we are. Now, one could argue that preserving that history in memory or through photographs and artifacts is sufficient. George Washington's home, Mount Vernon, have any of you visited that? It had fallen into disrepair and was headed for demolition. Would it have been enough to have sketches and drawings and verbal descriptions of that property? Mount Vernon was saved and restored by the Mount Vernon Ladies Association, and likewise, serious offers have been made to purchase and restore the manor house and gatehouse at Stonebridge. But Mr. Kite continues to argue that he can't sell the property if the structures remain. That seems to be an unfounded assumption, given reports of offers to buy the property with the structures. And I can imagine a development with those structures in place. For the new residents, it would link the new community directly to Lake Bluff's past. It's important to remember that destroying a community's history is an assault on its present and its future as much as its past. And a community that forgets its history can function no better than an individual with amnesia. Stonebridge project has had a long and difficult history, but there are valuable lessons to be learned from it as hopefully a new project is proposed. One of those lessons is the importance of timely and in-depth consultation with and involvement of the community. I met with Drew Irvin a couple years ago to discuss just this issue, and I want to publicly express my thanks to him for the extra efforts he has made to answer inquiries from me on behalf of the Stonebridge Watch Group. This is the sort of open and transparent government that should be the norm. But it is tragic that those lessons have had to have been learned at so great a price. Finally, I would like to recommend that unless it is given the support necessary to carry out its mission, the Historic Preservation Commission should be disbanded. There are a number of steps that it could have taken to at least try and preserve the historic buildings on the site. Why they did not is a question. But there is no point in having a Historic Preservation Commission if it is only to be an empty and symbolic piece. I thank you for your attention.
Thank you. Are there any other visitors wishing to make a declaration? Thank you. I hear you well. Thank you very much. Next is item number 6. The village board sets the order of a meeting. The village president and board of trustees will entertain requests from anyone present on the order of business to be conducted during the village board meeting, and understand that we have item 12, 14, 15, 16 that will be addressed first. Are there any more requests, or are there any objections? Thank you. So next item is item number 12, a resolution honoring the service of police officer Merit Price. Is there a motion to approve this resolution?
So moved. Second?
Thank you. Mr. Price, would you mind joining me? Officer Price, sorry.
It won't be Officer Priest.
This is honoring the public service of police officer Merit Price. Whereas Officer Price has served the residents of the village of Lake Bluff for more than 23 years as a member of the Lake Bluff Police Department. And whereas Officer Price, prior to his service to Lake Bluff, served his country as a member of the United States Air Force, as a security force member from April 1993 to October 1998, where he developed knowledge, skills, and abilities that helped prepare him to join the Lake Bluff Police Department. And whereas Officer Price began his law enforcement career on April 27, 1999 as a patrol officer. And whereas Officer Price was selected as the first Lake Bluff police officer to be part of a Northern Illinois Police Alarm System mobile field force, mouthful, and whereas Officer Price helped train many department members during his time as a field training officer, and whereas Officer Price excelled in his assignment as an evidence technician for the Lake County Major Crime Task Force, and whereas Officer Price was the first Lake Bluff officer to train department members on how to administer the life-saving drug naloxone, and whereas Officer Price served as the officer in charge for a significant number of duty shifts when a department supervisor was not present, and whereas Officer Price has received 4 department commendations and numerous letters of appreciation from the public and police agencies during his career. And now, therefore, be it resolved by the Village President and Board of Trustees of the Village of Lake Bluff, County of Lake and State of Illinois, that the Village of Lake Bluff hereby recognizes Officer Merit Price for his dedication and contribution to the Village of Lake Bluff over the past 23 years and congratulates him on his retirement from the Lake Bluff Police Department, and that this resolution be incorporated in the minutes of this proceeding, and that an executive copy of the resolution be delivered to Merit Price. Congratulations. This is a voice vote. Any questions? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? This motion carries. And Mr. Price, congratulations. Thank you. Next item is item number 14, a second reading of an ordinance granting variations from the village side yard setback and daylight plane height restrictions at 500 and 502 East North Avenue. Is there a motion to approve the ordinance?
So moved.
Thank you. Second.
Second.
Thank you. As a summary of background and reason for request, this is the first of 2 agenda items concerning 500 East North Avenue. On March 29th, 2022, the Village of Lake Bluff received a zoning variation application from Mike and Trish Reddy, joining as the applicants, for zoning relief necessary to modify and construct a second-story addition to the property at 500 East North Avenue. The applicant asserts that this work is necessary to provide a second bathroom to service occupants of 4 bedrooms on the second floor. This structure is existing non-conforming and uniquely encroaches across the lot line and upon the neighboring property. It is possible that this condition was created due to inadequate surveying when the structure was physically moved to this lot circa 1898. The property owner has indicated that the owner of the adjacent lot supports the proposed work and that they will reach a written agreement with the adjacent owner before a building permit is issued. The village attorney has reviewed the situation and the attached draft relief ordinance addresses the situation. At its April 28th meeting, the PCZBA conducted a public hearing and recommended 4-2 that the village board grant the requested relief. One dissenting member expressed, as shown in the draft minutes, that they could not support building onto a neighbor's property, even if the neighbor consented, as neighbors may be reluctant to voice their opposition. Following the PCZBA's April 20th recommendation, the applicant requested that the village defer further action regarding their variation request in order to allow the applicant to apply for landmark status and receive a recommendation from the Historic Preservation Commission. The village board approved first reading of the ordinance at its July 11th meeting and deferred final action at its July 25th meeting at the request of the applicant. In response to comments made at the July 11th meeting, the petitioner subsequently submitted revised plans that reduce the encroachment onto the neighboring property. And I really apologize, I've been speaking French for the past 2 weeks, and this is really hard right now. Are there any questions?
I just want to make a comment. I had the pleasure of visiting the home. Thank you for Ruddy's for welcoming into the home to take a look myself. I think that was an important step for me to really visualize what we were talking about. I was one of the board members in conversation that was struggling with the concept of allowing or voting in favor of a variance that was still encroaching on a neighboring property. What I saw was the properties are, and the homes, the structures are already incredibly, intensely close together. And the proposed construction that I'm looking at and the plans that we were sent today even show a willingness to not only take board recommendations, but to accommodate and actually improve on a situation that's already existing. So what I don't want to do is, as a board, get in the way of improving a situation that for whatever reason is already not complying with zoning regulations, and not take advantage of our ability to be subjective here. So that's what I want to share with everyone, that I got to see it, that I think that the issue remaining is the light obstruction, which is already seems like a non-issue for the neighbor because it's already kind of a precarious close. I mean, you could squeeze like a body sideways between the structures, it seems. So that's what I want to say.
Thank you. Any other comment on the board?
I'd just like to add, the Trustee Fisher, I appreciate her comments and I agree with them. Like, I think, I really appreciate that the homeowner came back with a new plan that was less encroachment and decided to do that kind of on their own, given what happened at the previous meeting, at the previous vote. So I appreciate that. I think this plan looks great, and I hope that the rest of the board feels the same way.
Thank you. Any
I'll
other
just
trustee?
say that I also appreciated their willingness to allow us to view the property itself, and to say, as I said earlier, that this is exactly the kind of thing that if we want to preserve these historic structures, we need to be flexible enough to provide for. And really appreciate the homeowner and the builder working so diligently to not only not exacerbate the problem, but actually reduce what is a pre-existing issue with their creativity. And so I appreciate it on many levels, not the least of which is the preservation of an important historic structure.
Thank you.
May I just ask a question? I remember at the end of the last discussion, I think it was on July 11th, Trustee Fisher had brought out an option to recommend or explore that second story part that is increasing the violation of the daylight plane, that 5-foot addition, if that could be at the property line. And it's my understanding that it's now moved back and that addition ends at the property line as opposed to extending from the existing foundation, which is 2-ish feet over the property line. Is that a true statement? Thank you.
Thank you.
Is there still a daylight plane violation?
Yes.
Yes.
I looked at the comments that George Russell made, and I tend to agree with him. I think this is kind of where we always end up, and we've seen this before, so I'm the outlier. I just agree with Member Russell's assertion that encroaching on someone's property despite their willingness to allow it just doesn't seem right. It isn't. So I think that there's a tendency not to want to object to that. That's sort of what he alluded to, and I agree, and this wouldn't be the only case. But what I always say in these cases is that we have to manage expectations. That's what I've said before to other people. And so now the expectation may be that this would be allowed. And I understand, Trustee Ryder, your comment about this, but I wasn't under the impression that demolition was an option. So we've seen this before. So especially if someone's going to landmark the piece of property, I assume they're not going to turn around and demolish it. So if we were to deny this because it encroaches, I have a hard time believing that people are going to demolish. And is it a non-conforming lot, Drew?
I don't think it's a non-conform, let me double check
Just
that.
non-conforming structure?
Yeah.
Because it wouldn't make any sense to do that because you couldn't build on the lot if you did demolish it. So I just think from the standpoint of our role here is to manage expectations of residents going not just each time, but to have some continuity, and so that when architects go to their clients, that they know that they can say, this is not gonna go well. So I would be in agreement with Member Russell, that despite what the neighbor had to say, you encroach on someone else's property and you open up a can of worms, I think, for the village. That just is not a path I would think we would want to go down.
Thank you, Kate. Let me open, any more comments on the board?
I guess one question I had with my statements concerning being good neighbors and what that looks like, I wondered if any further conversations with a neighbor in light of all of what's happened, to have that neighbor kind of candidly speak a little bit more. Did they show up at this meeting, or did they? You didn't ask her to?
I didn't ask her. It did not sound like you guys were terribly convinced by a neighbor.
Please state your address and name, please. Thank
Mike Reedy, 500 East North Avenue. At the last meeting, it didn't sound like you guys were moved by the neighbor's opinion. So dragging her up here and making her talk didn't seem.
Well, I would just like to clarify what I said, is that I feel like being asked to sign a document was really putting her in a bad position. And now that she understands where we are and kind of really wanting to understand, Member Ryder had said, well, I'm going to take her at her word. Whereas my position was, I know I've had to say things that were really hard to say, but I did it in terms of trying to promote neighborly harmony. And so I wondered, given those comments, if she felt compelled to say something, or you felt compelled to reach out to her, or to find out a little bit more?
I spoke to her, and she was happy with the first plan. She's happier with this one. Just to clarify, this is what George Russell objected to, was building mass on somebody else's property, and we understood that. We understood the objection. We're taking mass off of her property. We're not.
But we're keeping the daylight plane violation. And I appreciate this document, which more clearly kind of just illustrates what exactly is happening. And that was another frustration. It's that we're trying to find out further clarity. And this is exactly what provides that clarity, and I do appreciate that. I really do. I understand that there are things that are black and white, and there are things that are called compromises, and it's in that, you know, we're sometimes asked to make compromises. We're sometimes asked to do things that don't fit in the boxes. And I really do appreciate that this plan has continued to evolve. And I want to be very clear that that, to me, shows good neighborly behavior. And it really is an illustration to how to move forward. I did not have everything that I asked for. I didn't get everything that I wanted, you know, in terms of, I don't think it's right that we take an existing non-conforming and make it worse when you haven't demonstrated, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Were all the other options fully explored? But here we are. And so I'm really put in this position. I don't want to say I was wrong in saying what I said before, because I very strongly believe it. But I also want to support the spirit of compromise. And I wish I could turn back the hands of time and have you explore an option that did not further violate that plane, and I can't do that. And, you know, at this point in time, I think you've really made some efforts to reach out to the board. I appreciate that you reached out to the homeowner, and she did have another opportunity to say, you know what, that board member was right. I really did feel awkward, and I kind of wish I didn't have to sign it. So in this particular case, when Susan said, we need to take her at her word, I thought, it wouldn't add up in my book. That's just the way I would feel about it, because it's what's happened to me. I've had to say yes to things I didn't want to. But at this point in time, I'm glad that you had another communication with her. She did have another opportunity. I was very clear that that was one of my very big concerns. I think historic preservation is very important. People relationships and community relationships are more important. So at this point in time, I feel like we've made progress. I can support it. I didn't get everything that I was fighting hard for, not on behalf of me personally, not on behalf of the other homeowner who I've never spoken with in my life, but on behalf of the village. We're all trying to do what we think is right. And at this point, I'm willing to accept this compromise and appreciate the hard work that has been done. That's where I am.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Any more comments on the board before I move to any public comments?
I was just going to ask how much of a violation of the daylight plane is there, and what's the neighbors' feeling about that? Or do we know? Do we know?
My name is Rob Douglas. I live at 673 Maple Avenue, and I'm the architect for the Reedies here. And I think, looks like the copies you got, you can read it better than what I'm seeing here. But daylight plane runs up 12 feet on the property line and at a 45-degree angle. Where you see the small shed roof, that's above the existing kitchen of the house, and that wall is encroaching across the property line. Where you go up to the second floor and you can see, maybe it's easier for me to go there and point. Okay, here we go. Okay. This is encroaching across the property line. Right here, this is sitting on the other side of the property line, and this eave line remains behind the property line too. So this whole section has been pushed back. The ground floor, that's where it is, and that's where it's been since 1890, circa 1890. So I don't know what we can really do about this, but as far as daylight plane, you're going to have the daylight plane running up right through here, and then a 45-degree angle. So I don't believe daylight plane really is being altered from what it was originally. What we are trying to do is open up space between the buildings to create more breathing room from the existing condition where the eave, the projection of the rake of the gable to the chimney is approximately about 9 inches. It's really tight. And by pulling it back to this most recent version to 4 feet 5 inches is a significant change. And so that whole upper section is not on the adjacent property.
Yeah.
The only new construction is going to be the shed roof to cap off the top of the existing kitchen wing. And I agree, this is a very difficult, awkward situation, but, you know, this is how the cards fell on this house when it was relocated there, when it was located over on, I think over on Park Place as the headquarters to the camp meeting grounds. So, and once again, being an older home, we're trying to get this house modernized so it will be able to be maintained into foreseeable future. But it is a challenging living situation on the second floor with what we have right now. So I hope that explains, and I know George Russell well, and he stated that his opinion at the PCZBA back in April. It was a 4-2 vote in favor. And I kind of wish that we had George here, because I'd love to hear his thoughts on what is happening now, since his voice seems to be carrying a lot of weight. But Daylight Plain, to answer that question, I don't believe is really being impacted or altered from what it is right now. But we are getting building mass pulled away.
I don't have the calculations, but it's 5 feet higher, so it's 5 feet, and whatever extends over to that 45-degree angle, that's additional. I mean, you don't have to, there is a number, and you can calculate it, and it's a thing. It's a thing. It's not a thing, it is a thing. And you haven't actually calculated it and shown it, but it's a thing. It's, you know, when you look at that illustration, it sticks up 5 feet higher. That's what the definition is, and that's.
I understand.
Okay, but for people who don't, I mean, we're not well-versed in it, and when you say it's not really being impacted, it is. And we can say it's so close that it's not visible, we can say other things, but to say that it's not a thing, I don't believe is really guiding this board in the right way.
Right, I mean, it is self-serving to say that, I was gonna ask you, is it de minimis, meaning it's just inches, but what if 5 feet?
And I'm not saying that's right, that's what I think it is, and you're the expert, if you can explain it better, please do. I'm just saying, when you say it, there really isn't an impact, I just don't think that's an accurate statement.
Well, I mean, it's either a daylight plane violation or it's not. That's what it comes down to for me. I am the black and white person on the board, so that's how I approach all of these things, is it's either a violative or it isn't. And if it is, and it's not a de minimis violation, then the question is, how violative is it? And is it something that is allowable in our view? Particularly, I understand all of the unusual circumstances here. It was just a question as to get some more specifics from you, Rob.
Well, I
That's all.
just try to clarify.
Understood.
What we're trying to do is pull back building mass. You know, the daylight plane comes right off the property line, and the property line on this portion of the building is within the building itself. So, you know, there currently is a daylight plane violation, and there'll continue to be one unless this building's not on that site. So
if you took the width of the building and the height of the building that's over, you can get X number of square or cubed feet, right? I mean, it's a calculation that can be done.
yes, I
And it's in the
understand.
ordinance,
Right,
the
I
calculation,
understand.
yeah.
But the intent here was to try to get building mass down. We can't correct the daylight plane situation. And the calculation you're asking for, I have to say, has not been a focus. It was trying to get the construction off of the adjacent property. That was the primary objective here. Let's get any work being done on the second floor as an addition off the property to the east. And that's what this is reflecting, except for the shed roof that's over the existing kitchen.
So this is a catch-22, in other words. In order to solve the one problem, you have, moving the mass, as you say, you have this, it has to go somewhere. Is that a fair, like?
Let me
layperson
ask a
explanation?
clarifying question that might help. So the daylight plane was already in violation, just as the building was too close to the other building, that there's 2 violations currently existing.
That regulation was put into the village's code
Yes, after.
long after this
Right,
property.
I
yeah, yeah.
understand that, obviously. So my clarifying question is, I mean, I was there. So also these 2 buildings are going to be about the same heights, even with the add-on. That's what I visualized. So it's not like we're creating a towering new structure that's shadowing the neighbors to the east. They're going to be about the same height, but from what I'm looking at here and from my time at the property, it seems like more sunlight is now able to get down to that west-facing side of the neighboring house. So if there already was a daylight violation, a daylight plane violation, does it even matter if it's still there? That's my question. Like,
Right,
does it even matter?
and you could say, oh, it's de minimis because they're looking at a fireplace and nobody's window is, you can say all those things, but I don't think you can say there isn't an increase in the daylight plane violation. You can't say that, and
I
that's
need
been
to
my
stop you.
point.
I need to stop you on that because I think you're right. Okay, there's not going to be a good answer to your question. And the thing is, we're dealing with a situation that exists here for the past 100 years.
Right.
And we're trying to do a better situation with what for the residents and save a structure that is structure number 1 in Lake Bluff, literally, or something like that. And it follows what we agreed on as a board after the HPC, after what Steve Cross did, that is, we have an existing structure. We're trying to continue it or save it, but continue it with better accommodation within its walls. Here, the walls happens to be on somebody else's property, okay, so fine. But the point is, we're trying to do the best of the situation, and Rob, as an architect, has done his best to listen to us as meeting number 3 or 4 in this case, and come to us saying, guys, that's all I can do. And guess what? The daylight plane is pretty much the last thing I can't deal with.
I agree, and that's why I've already stated that I appreciate the efforts, I appreciate the compromise. That is the spirit of being a good neighbor. But saying that the daylight plane is not being an increased violation doesn't help me want to make those compromises. I've already said I will. I'm not going to pull it back. I'm just asking for numbers so that when somebody says, is there an increase in daylight plane violation? Yes. There is. And it could be mitigated by the closeness of the building next to it because nobody's going to be looking at it. You could say a number of things, but to say that that calculation doesn't make sense or it hasn't increased, I don't think that's helpful for the board. We want to be able to say yes, and I am willing to say yes.
I apologize for misspeaking on daylight plane. That was not something that we were prepared to address. It seemed like based on the July meeting we had, it was about minimizing construction on an adjacent property consistent to what George Russell had mentioned back in April. And that was the focus. I have to admit, daylight plane, I wasn't prepared for that question. There's a certain horizontal line that the daylight plane has at 10 feet, or excuse me, in the horizontal as it goes up against a gable roof, and I don't have that calculation in my mind. I wasn't prepared for that.
And that's fine. It's not like I'm saying, give me a number to the
misspoke, and I
to the
apologize.
100th digit. But it was a yes or no. Does it increase it?
I
Does it not?
apologize
That's
for
all.
speaking. I apologize.
Thank you.
Let me open, if there are no more comments on the days, I would like to open comments, public comments, if there are any. Do we have any public comments on this subject? Do we have any public comments online?
If anybody has any comments who's participating in the village's Zoom meeting, please raise your hand so that you can be addressed by the village president.
Are there any more comments on the board?
I think I see something, Rob, that's helpful to understand exactly how this is going to be. On the north elevation, option 1, you're talking about a dormer, right? I mean, that's from this, is this still accurate? Is that what this, because it really is, I mean, now it makes more sense to me what we're talking about. And correct me if I'm wrong, about the way this is going to look, but it appears that you would put a blue dotted line on the elevation with the daylight plane. And I'm just trying to understand it because this is what we owe people, and I know it's a hassle, but I just want to make sure that I fully understand that this is a certain number of feet, but not excessive.
I didn't bring all the documents with me.
You can tell
As
me
I said,
the,
I wasn't prepared for,
Trustee Brianna, if you want to give me the page number, I can share my screen.
On mine, it's 155, and it just fills in, and it's sort of just something that, I'm just trying to understand what it's gonna look like, that's all. That's all. Because as Trustee Ankerman points out, not all of us have a, architecture background, so understanding this is easier with these elevations. That's really helpful.
Bear with me here.
It's
Gonna
on
reload.
What is it?
Mine says 155.
I think so much of it is
Anyway, it's the north elevation.
But this is the new version.
Okay.
Do you see what I mean?
Yeah, I
This is the
do.
new version
No,
of
I-
it, so
I
it's
think this
pulled
is the
back.
older version,
So it is
actually.
less,
Right,
but
got it. All right.
I'm not gonna-
Kate, is that the updated version, or is this the old
No, I'm just, it's a
version?
good, it's
a good
better-
illustration of the daylight
This is a
plane.
really good comparison to
Right.
be able to look back and see what has changed. And so you can see how much has been changed. It's quite a lot. So the modification is significant. I think if you look at north elevation from the original plan and this, it's a significant change.
there it is.
Yeah. If I'm looking at this, this correctly, as a comparative analysis.
Is that the drawing you're referring to, Trustee Brianna?
Yep.
that is the
Yep.
April elevations reviewed by the PCZBA.
Right, and so now it looks completely different. So that was what the point I think we were getting at, is this is not, the proposal today does not look like this anymore. So therein lies the difference, in terms of the improvement.
And just to be clear too, that
Responsive.
Yeah.
It was the property line, correct?
Yeah.
the way the calculation works within the code, it works based off the setback, and you can see that this area, the foundation and the first floor will remain. This is where the new shed dormer is going to be. So the idea that it will follow closely, it'll still be an encroachment, right? That
Yeah.
certainly exists.
Right, but to a degree that's significantly different than it was, which is all that's what I was getting at, so that answers
this-
the question.
In the second story, yes.
Yep.
Yep.
Thank you.
And thank you for your patience for everybody for downloading the document again.
Thank you. So
Takes a long time to download.
I understand there are no more questions from the board, and I understand there are no more public comments, correct?
Yes.
And so moving on to, I understand also this is a roll call vote because of the different issues we had on this ordinance. So clerk, please call the roll.
Trustee Brienne.
Aye.
Trustee Fisher.
Aye.
Trustee Markey.
Aye.
Trustee Ryder.
Aye.
Trustee Inkman.
Aye.
Congratulations. Next item is item number 15, a continuation of the same property. Again, this is an ordinance designating the building located at 500 East North Avenue as a Lake Bluff Historic Landmark. Is there a motion to approve this ordinance?
So moved.
Second.
Thank you. This is the second of two agenda items concerning 500 East North Avenue again. On May 2022, the village received an application to designate the single-family residence located at 500 East North Avenue as a historic landmark. This application was submitted by the property owners, Michael and Patricia Reedy. The applicant filed their landmark nomination following a variation request considered by the Village Joint Plan Commission and Zoning Board of Appeals at its April meeting. According to the application, this Gothic revival building was originally constructed in 1876 and was used as the offices of the Lake Bluff Camp Meeting Association elsewhere in the village before the building was physically relocated to 500 East North Avenue. Notice was published in the Lake County News Sun and mailed to surrounding property owners at least 15 days in advance of a meeting, as required by the ordinance. This building was one of 24 previously identified by the HPC as representing the highest priorities for preservation in the village by Resolution 2021-HPC-01. At its June 8th meeting, the HPC conducted a public hearing and unanimously recommended that the village board designate the single-family residence as a landmark for the reasons set forth in the attached draft ordinance. If approved, this would be the village number 24th active landmark and 31st in total. In addition, during the pendency of a landmark application, the residence is subject to an advisory review by the HPC before a building permit can be issued for any proposed change. And in this case, the work that is the subject of the application of a variation request. The HPC unanimously concluded its advisory review at the same meeting. The village board approved first reading of the ordinance at its July 11th meeting and deferred final action at its July 25th meeting at the request of the applicant. Are there any questions on this designation of public landmark, historic landmark? I see no questions. Do we have a public comment?
Yes.
Public comment? I think it would be appropriate also to ask for if there are any public comments in the room or online. And I see none. And I believe this is a roll call vote as well. Clerk, please call the roll.
Trustee Fisher?
Aye.
Trustee Markey?
Aye.
Trustee Ryder?
Aye.
Trustee Ingemann?
Aye.
Trustee Brian?
Aye.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
I'm very happy to give you
Look at the plaque.
Ah. Thank you for all your work.
Yeah.
Is this going to be conforming to a structure we will fix that?
Yes.
No,
Place that into the encroachment, right?
right on the side.
Too soon?
Sorry.
I thought it was
Next item is item number 16. An ordinance granting a variation from the village's accessory structure setback at 305 East Scranton Avenue. Is there a motion to approve this ordinance?
So moved?
Thank you. Second. Thank you. In December 2021, village staff were notified by a complainant that a pergola was being constructed without a permit at 305 East Scranton Avenue. An inspection found that a pergola or two connected pergolas was constructed without a permit approximately in the corner of a lot. This location is within the 5-foot side and rear yard setbacks applicable to accessory structures. Following meetings between staff and the property owners, Joseph and Alexandra Peck, on March 28th, 2022, the applicant submitted a request for zoning relief to retroactively authorize the pergola. In their application, the applicant asserts that the pergola is necessary for the applicant to protect their children and visitors from falling black walnuts being dropped by a tree located in the lot abutting theirs from the rear. At its June 15 meeting, the PCZBA conducted a public hearing and unanimously recommended that the village board grant the requested relief with a number of special conditions shown in the attached draft ordinance. In summary, the applicant must, number one, remove a pergola if the applicant moves. Number two, remove a pergola if the abutting tree comes down. Number three, obtain a building permit for the pergola. Number four, anchor the pergola securely to the ground. And number five, comply with any drainage conditions upon the building permit for the pergola. The village board previously considered this request at its June 27th, July 11th, and July 25th meetings. At the most recent meeting, following a feedback and dialogue among the applicant and a neighboring property owner, the village board directed staff to revise the ordinance and incorporate: one, a minimum 3-foot setback, 2-foot variation from the side and rear lot lines. Number two, the installation of landscape screening along the rear property line. Number three, that no netting and other encroachment should occur along the rear property line. And number four, the PCZBA recommended conditions of approval. These amendments are shown in the document in red line in the attached draft. Are there questions on this item?
I would just like to thank, you guys don't have to come, no. I would just like to thank both of you for being able to come to a compromise. And I know it probably hasn't been easy, and we appreciate it.
I will second Trustee Markey on that, where I don't think it was an easy process. And thank you very much for working with us on this subject. Any more comments? I believe this is a roll call vote.
Public comment.
I believe we have one.
Well, we just, if there's any.
I'm sorry. Are there any online comments?
Doesn't appear to be anyone wishing to make any comments online.
Thank you so much. So again, it is a roll call vote. Clerk, please call the roll.
Trustee Markey?
Aye.
Trustee Ryder?
Aye.
Trustee Ingemann?
Aye.
Trustee Brienne?
Aye.
Trustee Fisher?
Aye.
Thank you very much. And now we resume the normal order of the meeting. Next is our
7A.
village finance report. Item 7A, that is our warrant report for July 26th to August 22nd, 2022, and July payroll expenditures. Is there a motion to approve the warrant report?
So moved.
Thank you. A second.
Second.
Thank you. As a summary of background and reason for request, expenditure of village funds for payments of invoices in the amount of $404,634.76 for July 26 to August 8th, 2022, and expenditure of village funds for payment of invoices in the amount of $577,766.42 for August 9 to August 22nd, 2022. And expenditure of village fund for payment of payroll in the amount of $325,426.20 for July 2022, for a total expenditures of $1,307,827.38. Two documents are attached: the warrant report for July 26 to August 8th, 2022, in the amount of $404,634.76, and the warrant report for August 9th to August 22nd in the amount of $577,766.42. And again, the invoice register report shows checks with a status of open or paid. All checks with a status of open are computer-generated checks for the board final approval. Checks with a status of paid or manual checks processed. Are there any comments in Peru?
I just wanted to comment, at the earlier Finance Committee meeting, Bettina was in attendance, and everyone who is present at today's meeting was also present at that meeting. And we had the opportunity to ask any questions. At that time, there were no questions, and so Bettina made herself available, but we had no questions at that time.
Thank you. And I believe that we do not have an addressed question at this time on both warrant reports.
You can ask if there's any public comment as well.
Do we have any public comments, Mr. Rubin?
No, sir.
Thank you. It is a roll call vote. Clerk, please call the roll.
Trustee Ryder.
Aye.
Trustee Ingerman.
Aye.
Trustee Brienne.
Aye.
Trustee Fisher.
Aye.
Trustee Markey.
Aye.
Thank you very much. Next is our item 7B, that is our July 2022 finance report. Do you mind taking this?
No, and I won't read the cover of the memo, but we talked a little bit about the staff meeting, I'm sorry, and the finance committee meeting as well, but the idea that sales taxes are dipping a little bit, but we expected that, we talked about that. It's kind of floating in that space of not the peak that it was last year, but also it's performing high at the same level pre-COVID. Obviously, I think we're linking that with what's happening in the car industry and the lack of chips still, and just a lot of lack of product to move. And then I think interestingly as well, the food and beverage taxes continue to perform at a high level, at all-time levels, and so that's a good note, and that's really kind of the highlights of the report.
Just, I didn't plan on asking this question, but it seemed like sales tax and home rule kind of did a little flippity-flop. Is that, they weren't quite in sync, and home rule was a little higher? Was it that portion, or that's not a fair question to ask on the fly?
Well, I mean, I
Why
think
did I
it's-
ask that? But that's a good thing that home
Yeah.
rule was up.
It is, and I think that's the idea of also the inflation, right? Showing that the products cost more, they're going to pay a higher tax as a percentage basis on that, so the volume is there, and that those shelves have remained full, unlike the shelves for cars have not.
Right. Right.
That's true. There's actually more inventory than they can deal with versus the car industry, which is having the opposite problem.
Yep.
But so when you mentioned food and beverage tax, the breakout, because the pie chart is still year-to-date through the end of the first quarter. So we don't have second quarter, we still don't have second quarter numbers.
No.
But I'd be interested to see what those are. I know they come slowly. But if you extrapolate out the automotive, it'll be significantly lower than it has been historically. So where did the information for the food and beverage numbers come from?
If you
I
look-
always look to this pie chart to see that breakout. You're talking about restaurants?
Yeah,
Yeah. I mean, it's true, people are still dining out a lot.
you look at the page 59 in the packet, has the bottom of that, has it broken out by sector. And the food there is on a pace to perform.
Oh, you're
better.
doing the same thing I'm doing.
Yeah,
You're
yeah.
saying that
Yeah.
that first quarter pace is, if you look at
Trending
it,
in the right direction, yeah,
got it, versus that's exactly,
yeah.
yeah, so they're a scissors, right, Barbara?
Sure.
The old-
Having not thought out the analogy, it
the-
sounds good.
No, the accounting term is
Yeah.
scissors going in the opposite direction. So, anyway, we'll hope for better automotive news, maybe in 2023.
So thank you. I forgot to ask for a motion for this item. Is there a motion to approve this financial report?
Oh, for the finance report, so moved.
Finance report. Thank you. If there are no more
So you
comments,
get- was a motion, was there a second? I'm sorry, I missed that, thank you.
it's a voice vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Thank you very much. Item number 8 is the village administrator's report. I believe that you have a report for us tonight.
Slight theme tonight, trees, right? We're doing some tree talk.
Yes.
Good news, the village received some early information regarding the 2020 Chicago tree survey. When you look at the greater region, I think Lake Bluff continue, I don't know if we are actually on the medal stand for gold, but we certainly are, we're medaling. And so I think it's a really interesting report. Obviously, it's not the perfect data, but it's a really good comparative metric for where we sit in the metro region with regards to canopy cover and diversification of species, and all that feeds into the upcoming item dealing with the village's tree maintenance program and maintaining the quality urban forest that we have and continue to diversify that. As the report outlines, we're trying to avoid overplanting any one specific species. I think it's interesting to look at the great number of oaks that we have, but also they're applauding us in one hand, saying great, that you have great, but you got to protect those at the same time. You really shouldn't be any more than 10% of any one specific species. So kind of mixed messages there, but it's one thing to have such a great oak forest remaining, knowing that it's not an easy task to do. So that's all I have. It was just informational. I'm happy to try to answer any questions if there are any. But yeah, overall, the village's canopy actually ticked up a little bit, very, very small amount. I don't know if I guess we can consider that a small victory given that the village went through emerald ash borer in that time frame. So that's all I have.
Thank you very much. Next item is item number 13, again about trees, and following past discussions on this board, and I really appreciate this follow-up. It is a resolution authorizing the purchase of parkway tree maintenance services. Is there a motion to approve this resolution?
So moved.
Thank you.
Second.
13.
We have to go back and do the, at some point after this one, of course, we can do the acceptance of the correspondence.
Sorry about that.
Yeah, and I'm sure Laura has a big report to offer. But you can continue this one, yeah.
We can backtrack.
As you wish.
Okay, let's backtrack. Let's be organized. Acceptance of a,
Number 9.
Number 9. You can accept my report if you wish. It doesn't matter. It's just informational anyway.
It's not online.
You don't have to, you don't
Yeah.
actually have to accept it.
Yeah, but, so it's number 9, village attorney's report.
Company document.
Nothing to report as the village attorney.
I'm so sorry.
I don't have anything to report other than that Peter really looks forward to being back here with all of you and is sorry that he can't be tonight.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. I completely blanked out. I'm really sorry. Next is our village resident report also. And I would like to mention one item for tonight that I think is important from a procedural standpoint. I had the chance to interface with Congressman Brad Schneider this week, and referring to Congressman Schneider, discussed with him our Lake Bluff Viaduct project, where we have received verbal support for him to support us to, basically from a finance standpoint, to support us to get this project, this community project to be done. This project is called the Lake Bluff Community Project Funding Submission, and it is included in the House passed appropriation bill number HR 8294, the 117. Sorry about that. Congress was regarding Transportation, Housing, and Urban Development and Related Agencies Appropriations Act of 2023, and there's a URL with it, did actually include our name and passed passed that appropriation in the House. We're waiting for the Senate to actually get the next action on this item. Unfortunately, we're a little bit unclear on the detail of that item. And so,
Dollar amount portion.
The important part.
The big number.
very important portion.
Yes.
And so we have interfaced with Congressman Schneider's aide, and we're under the same understanding, but with the reading of that act differs in understanding. So we're waiting for more information on that. But this is all favorable for us.
And should it actually pass, they believe that would be in November, but maybe as late as next year in terms of before that gets done.
Correct, and from what I understand, this is actually a bipartisan issue. Everybody benefits from transportation and infrastructure. So from a support standpoint, both people, congressmen in the House and Senate benefit from that bill. And so therefore, having passed the House, there is a good likelihood for that to also pass the Senate. That would be followed by a reconciliation, and then that would be actually coming back to us at that point. So it's a good news, but we're still unclear about a couple details.
That's great.
Next item is item 11, acceptance of a correspondence. Please note that all correspondence was delivered to the Village Board of Trustees in the informational reports on July 22nd, 29, and August 5th and August 12, 2022. Any questions? This is a voice vote.
Yeah, the only thing I would denote then there, so good news, bad news, in that information report, it did talk about the village's downtown, rebuilding downtown grant notification was not good. We did not get the grant for the Central Business District Block 1 improvement. Kind of anticipated that answer, but it was officially official. So, came late last week, early last week, so.
Bummer.
Bummer.
So this is a voice vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Thank you. The motion carries. Next item is item 13, again about trees. A resolution authorizing the purchase of Parkway Tree Maintenance Services. Is there a motion to approve this resolution?
So moved.
Second.
Thank you very much. In order to maximize the village in-house staff resources and improve the consistency and frequency of a village tree trimming program, the fiscal year 2022 budget anticipates retaining an outside firm to prune parkway trees on a regular cycle. Consistent with village purchasing policy, village staff published an open and competitive solicitation for tree pruning services on July 8. The solicitation asks for pruning services consistent with NCA 300 standards, as well as the village tree ordinance, and were reviewed by Urban Forest Management, Inc., the village forestry consultants. Notably, the scope of work also includes updates to the village inventory of public parkway trees. The inventory updates will coincide with the implementation of new tree tags and management software that will continue to modernize the village forestry program. 3 proposals were received at the August 11th deadline. Lucas Landscaping and Design, Winkler Tree and Lawn Care, and Kinukan Tree Experts. Staff recommends award of a 4-year contract with the services to Lucas Landscaping and Design as the best responsible and responsive bidder. The contract would have a total value of $357,840, roughly equally split across 4 years. The fiscal year 2023 budget includes $30,000 for this purchase. Staff recommends award notwithstanding with the amount of the contract exceeds the fiscal year 2023 budget for the following reasons. Number 1, contingency funds are available to pay for the program in fiscal year 2023 for $80,353. Delaying implementation of the program may lead to increased cost as the bidding environment inflates further. Number 3, the condition of a village tree is unlikely to improve during the pendency of a subsequent bid. Number 4, and final 4, the realized cost from bidding remains substantially less than the cost of expanding the village in-house forestry capacity. Any question on the board?
I was just curious, Drew, if we have any understanding of why the 4-year bids between Lucas and Kinukan were so far apart?
I honestly, I don't know.
Canoe we use quite often, you know, and they can be sometimes a really good bidder.
Jake, can you please introduce yourself and state your address?
No, he doesn't use it.
No, just his name.
Can you please?
Jake Turlap, Public Works Superintendent. Yeah, with Canoe, I don't know, because sometimes like they'll bid and they'll be our lowest bidder, and sometimes they'll be our highest bidder, sometimes they're right in the middle. I was surprised when we opened that one. I mean, I'm not, I was surprised, we read that one and I was like, oh, wow, so.
Okay.
Winklers, you know, is pretty common. I see them on a lot of bids around the North Shore. And then Lucas has been kind of one of our guys for,
them a lot.
oh yeah, he used them a lot. Originally, the first CPI or the MPI we ever did, he won the award and did the ash trees on East Blodgett. So
And
it was
just,
good.
sorry to interrupt you, Jake. So the MPI, for those who don't know what that is a municipal partnering initiative, which was a joint procurement where the village worked with several other, I'll say northern, because it wasn't just North Shore, it was Morton Grove to
Yeah, there was a
all
bunch. Yeah, there was a
over.
lot of us. We met at
But we
Bannock
banded
for that.
together to try to do procurement for services and programs and professional services, and were successful for many years. And one of those was, we talked about tree removal, and that was right around the time EAB was striking us. So Lucas came in and was like dramatically less expensive than others. And so for many years, we just kind of piggybacked on that bid for years and kept rolling that through because it was the most economical choice. But they have a great reputation. Certainly, we keep on calling on them. They do great work.
And we recommend them too. I mean, a lot of residents use them also. So I'm very satisfied that, that it is Lucas and somebody that we can really work with.
Yeah,
well.
in a perfect world, we would have had more bidders, right? And so we directly sent it to folks hoping for bids. Some of the much bigger firms were, too far away. There was Homer Tree Service who's down south.
Some of them were too busy.
Yeah.
Was Davy one of the ones that was too
Davey
busy?
was not interested. No, yeah.
Okay.
And that's why we bid it in a way so that if somebody felt like they can more efficiently do it in one trip, we give them a choice, right? The idea is, hey, if you want to come through, you can do it in 2 years, or, see if there's economies of scale for that. And this is what we had, and that's the recommendation.
So I know that you did an analysis of, if we had tried to do this in-house, that was kind of one of the, so, I mean, just not granular, but how do you anticipate saying that this is, more cost-effective? Because we'd have to hire 2 full people and buy this kind of truck and that kind of,
We couldn't hire one person for this,
yeah.
for the price or the skill set. And it's difficult in this market to keep people. And that was, we've heard that from vendors. We can't hold on to the talent ourselves. And so, we couldn't do it for this.
Especially in this space. And I think the other issue is that if you notice what they're providing in terms of their crew, we don't have any climbers. And so that's the biggest issue, is the village, Jake's not up in the top of 120.
We're not insured to climb. I mean,
Yeah.
it's that simple,
So it is the skill set of the climbers. That's I think that, we've discussed this before, that's the biggest impediment. Because, and the boom trucks and all the equipment that they have, so it's a total approach. My question for you, Jake, was where you're gonna start, because there are some trees and if this also, for smaller caliper trees, we have quite a few in the North Terrace that have died. There's one just right in front from my house that's dead, and it's a small caliber tree, but there's a heritage oak up on Garfield and Hancock that's in really, really bad shape. It's a 40 plus. It's probably, if I'm what, 67 inches, wingspan, I can't get my arms around it. It's massive. It's a massive, massive tree. So in terms of the inventory, we have a lot of small caliper trees, but if there's a tree that's clearly needs to be removed, is that included, or is this strictly pruning?
This is pruning.
No, so so then they would just say, hey, FYI, this
They
is,
communicate to us, they find something that they say, hey, it'd be more efficient if you removed
you
this.
just take this
Yeah.
out.
And that's in there,
then
yeah.
they would have obviously separate for removal, like I'm afraid this tree is headed for. So that obviously would be totally separate. But I was just curious where you were gonna start, because the terraces are in desperate straits, I think.
Well, we do have it broken out into 4 sections, as equal as possible. based on number of trees, we can pick any spot to start. I mean, we haven't gotten to that point yet. We can pick any spot to start.
October is when they're supposed to start work, my recollection from the agreement.
Well, the
Yeah.
second, I mean, in all honesty, once we get him to sign the contract, we can start. It's just certain trees he can't trim at this time.
And the oaks, you'd wait until January, February, probably?
Yeah.
I mean, they know what they're doing. They're all over the place. I think this is cool, though, to all of the specificity, especially with regard to the tools. I was happy to see all that, you know, like using clean tools, all that stuff, because that's the difference maker between one company and another, in my view. You don't always get that.
Thank you. I have following this comment, I have a totally serious comment that actually made a difference in other communities. And I noticed that, and I knew that, but we're gonna get a new inventory software for our trees and new tags, as you said. So what I've read that I thought was absolutely cool was the ability for residents to actually email those trees. So of course you would receive email, but if I send email to a certain tree, you would know that this is this tree, and people say, well, there's a family of squirrels in there and blah, blah, blah. But you would be able to identify trees and be able to understand what's happening with those trees with specific email addresses. And for these communities that have done that, what has happened, and remember that we're a tree city, people love our trees, people started to write love letters to the trees. And what I thought absolutely great was, well, not only do we know that people like the trees, but we understand how significant the trees are in the life of people. And so where I found it was absolutely amazing. That was, I think, Wall Street Journal or New York Times, one of these two. But the point is, it's a possibility to expand our trees and the importance of our trees to our community. So my question to you is, with that new software, could we open that possibility to our residents?
That, I don't know. We'd have to look into that, honestly. I honestly don't know. One thing that this is going to do is that with the tags and with this new software, which is basically geospatial, right? So you may be dragging the number and be kind of on top of that tree when you are looking at it. Right now, if you were to look at our tree inventory, it's kind of like, it's in an old Access database. I know how to run it perfectly, and I know exactly what everything is and how it works, but if you were to look at it, or somebody else on the outside, it wouldn't make any sense to them. You know, they're kind of like, what does F1 mean, and what is R2, and why do you have this number and this number? And so this is gonna kind of, and then now, and out on the street, you're gonna walk up and you're gonna see a tag with 3,542 on it. And if you saw that and said, geez, something doesn't look right here, and you could email into the contact us portion, you know, hey, I was at 355 today, tree 355 today, and something ain't right.
And I fell in love.
Yeah, and I fell in love. No, I'm not gonna write you back, I'm sorry, I don't possess that skill. But, I mean, it will be like one of those things where we could just click, oh yeah, that's a
still think
242
this is
east,
an
you know.
important idea. We have people that, you know what, this is funny, okay? We have a person on this board who says, no, that tree on Garfield, and you say, absolutely. So we know our trees. I know, I walk my dogs, I know the trees. You can tell me anywhere in this, I know the species, I know the stuff. I moved here because of the trees. And I still believe that the fact that we can talk about trees individually and say why we love this community because the trees is important. And it could be, I mean, I still believe that this is a great idea. So I would love for us to look into that.
Just in your spare time, maybe, you know, on the weekends.
Well,
just-
and
It's an interesting
the
idea
Davy
that they-
Tree Keeper too is also like, it's gonna be, it's kind of nice about it. It's not like, all right, you get 3 licenses and sorry, that's it. Nobody else can access and whatever. I mean, so we are gonna have it on our phone or whatever. Anytime we're entering some work or stuff, now when we do it, it's on paper. Then the cumbersome portion, if it comes to me, I'll enter it, or if somebody is down, they enter the information. And then it's like a 5-step process anytime we do anything. Now it's gonna be kind of click, done. And if you trim, 7 trees in a row, you can just kind of drag and drop, circle the 7 trees, all trimmed on this date. It'll have, so there's an efficiency that's about to come our way too, which is really nice with record keeping will be, it's going to be, it's night and day. I mean, it really is. I mean, from a homemade access database to something with GIS capability and.
It's portable.
Yeah,
The data's
and portable, yeah.
I'm happy we're making this progress for our residents on our trees. So thank you very much, Jake.
I'm sorry, I have one more question about scheduling, just to follow up with Kate was saying. So will you guys actually have a schedule set out for Lucas for when they come in, and you'll know that ahead of time? I'm just wondering if that might be helpful to let residents know, if we could put that in the Lake Bluff letter.
For sure.
Let them know, like, hey, this week, we're gonna be working
You're gonna
here.
notice so-and-so, you're gonna notice tree trimming in your neighborhood or something like
Yeah,
that.
yeah.
Yeah, we could easily, I don't see that being a problem.
Yeah, I
Yes.
think that would be nice for residents. Okay, thanks.
Thank you. Any more questions? I believe this is a,
Questions?
do we have any questions online?
Does anyone have any comments online that wish to be heard regarding this item before it's acted upon? Please raise your hand. No one?
It seems no one is raising a hand. It is a roll call vote. Clerk, please call the roll.
Trustee Ingemann.
Aye.
Trustee Brand.
Aye.
Trustee Fisher.
Aye.
Trustee Markey.
Aye.
Trustee Ryder. Ryder.
Aye.
Sorry.
Thank you very much. And Jake, thank you very much for what you're doing for us. Next item is item number 17. 17. It is a resolution granting a fireworks permit to the Lake Bluff Park District for the 2022 Lake Bluff Birthday Bash. Can I please, is there a motion to approve this resolution?
So moved.
Thank you. Second.
Second.
Thank you. Following the success of last year's Lake Bluff 125+1 birthday party, a community group is organizing the second annual Lake Bluff birthday bash. Is this going to be 125+2?
I think so.
This event will occur at Blair Park and the Lake Bluff Golf Course the evening of Saturday, September 24th, 2022. Similar to last year, the Birthday Bash program is proposed to include a public fireworks show. Section 5-7-6-2 of the Village Municipal Code makes it unlawful to, at any time, sell, offer for sale, give away, possess, store, discharge, or otherwise use fireworks of any kind within the village, provided, however, that upon a permit being issued therefore by the Board of Trustees, fireworks may be stored and used for public exhibition. Accordingly, the village board will need to issue a permit for fireworks to occur at the upcoming celebrations. Questions? Yes, Barb.
I'm sure our fire department will be at the ready if something negative were to happen, but how do we know how to responsibly put on the show? Do we hire somebody to do that so that because it's a specialized skill to know how to do that in a safe manner, and I just wondered what we were doing to that end.
So, the village has been planning this, well, actually going back several years, going back to the first plan for the 125th, but it's essentially, it's the same format, it's the same vendor. We are using the same public safety planning exercise that we did before, and we've met multiple times with the police and the fire department on site. We've met with the vendor multiple times, and the safety plan has been recommended for approval by the fire chief. And there are times when the village, let's say, for example, the Shore Acres fireworks show. So procedurally in Lake County, when they issue fireworks permits for unincorporated areas, the local fire chief provides a review, and that makes a recommendation. So Chief Graff is familiar with reviewing those types of permits. So, so yes, there's been a thorough review of this, and same as last year, and we believe that was a very safe event.
Well, I
turned out
missed
well.
last year, so
Oh.
I'm so glad that I can see it this time around.
I'm just going to plug that last year was amazing.
I
It
know.
was
Don't
so
talk about it, 'cause
beautiful.
I missed it. I'm
It'll
so
be
mad.
beautiful again this year, I'm sure.
Oh.
They're kind of following the same format from what I understand and what
Yeah.
Drew's saying. I mean, it was amazing. And the location is so nice because there's just lots of open green space to sit and have a picnic and do whatever you want to do. So I highly recommend it if you're in town to,
The one
Head over there.
improvement is the village is using this opportunity to have this event serve as the village's. The village historically has saluted its volunteers and held an event for that purpose on, actually down by the lake. And we thought it would be a great idea to do that up at the park, and while there's fireworks, and kind of building on the success of last year's event by the 125 committee. So you probably received today, maybe even a save the date for that.
Okay.
So that's going out to the village's volunteers, to include the other volunteer boards in the community, library, park district, school board, et cetera.
Fantastic.
Very exciting. Thank you to the ones that are taking on to celebrate our village this year again. So thank you very much. Any more questions before a roll call vote? Clerk, please call the roll.
Trustee Brienne?
Aye.
Trustee Fisher?
Aye.
Trustee Ryder?
Aye.
Trustee Markey?
Aye.
Trustee Ingerman?
Aye.
Next is item number 18, our trustees' report. Do any trustee wish to make a report tonight? Thank you. I understand that we do not have an executive session tonight,
Correct.
and so that leads us to item 20, that is our adjournment. Could I please have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Thank you. Second.
Second.
Thank you. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Anyone opposed? Awesome. And we're adjourned, and this concludes this village board meeting. Thank you to anyone in attendance, and have a great